Your parasite life is over, my wife declared after her promotion, saying we would each pay our own expenses from now on. I agreed. Then on Saturday, her brother came for lunch, looked at the table, looked at me, and Saeed, it's about time. She finally found out. Your parasite life is over, my wife Clara declared the moment she walked through the door. She tossed her designer handbag onto the kitchen island, not even looking at me. She had just been promoted to senior vice president at her firm, a position that doubled her salary. From now on, we split everything down the middle, she said, her voice dripping with cold disdain. We each pay our own expenses. I am done carrying you. I sat at the dining table, quietly closing my laptop. I didn't argue. I didn't remind her of the sacrifices I made so she could work 80-hour weeks. I just looked at her, nodded, and calmly replied, if that's what you want, Clara, I agree. She looked almost disappointed that I didn't beg. For the past 4 years, I worked from home, keeping my professional life incredibly private. Because I flew under the radar, Clara and her family assumed I was just scraping by on a meager freelance income. They saw me doing the grocery shopping, cooking, and managing the household, and they mistook my support for dependency. True to her word, the next morning, Clara split our expenses. She calculated the exact utility costs, the mortgage, and even the groceries down to the penny. I paid my half instantly, without a single complaint. Then came Saturday. Clara had invited her younger brother, Julian, over for lunch to celebrate her promotion. Julian was a carbon copy of Clara, arrogant, status-obsessed, and fiercely competitive. I spent the morning preparing a lavish spread, using high-end ingredients I bought entirely with my own money. When Julian arrived, he swaggered into the dining room, smelling of expensive cologne. He took a seat, looked at the perfectly set table, and then looked up at me with a smirk. It's about time she finally found out, Julian said, chuckling as he poured himself a glass of wine. Clara smiled proudly, pouring herself a drink. Oh, he knows, Julian. We are strictly independent now. The free rides are officially over. I sat down at the head of the table, entirely unbothered, and took a sip of my water. Found out about what, Julian? I asked, keeping my tone perfectly conversational. Julian leaned back, crossing his arms. Come on, man. You've been living off my sister's ambition for years. You're lucky she kept you around this long, but now that she's at the top, a parasite just doesn't fit the image. The room went quiet, save for the ticking of the wall clock. Clara didn't defend me. She just watched, waiting to see me break. Instead, I smiled, a slow, calm, entirely relaxed smile. You're right, Julian, I said softly. A parasite really doesn't fit the image. I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen a few times, and laid it face up on the center of the table. It was a corporate press release, scheduled to go public on Monday morning. Clara frowned, leaning forward to read the screen. As her eyes scanned the text, the color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. The press release announced the final acquisition of her firm by a private equity conglomerate, and listed at the very top as the primary stakeholder and newly appointed chairman of the board was my name. Julian blinked, confused by his sister's sudden silence. What is that, Clara? What's wrong? Clara tried to speak, but her voice was nothing more than a breathless croak. You bought the firm? I didn't just buy it, Clara. I've owned the parent company for 3 years, I said, my voice deadpan and icy cold. I kept it quiet because I wanted our marriage to be about us, not my portfolio. I was happy playing the supportive husband while you built your career. Julian's smirk vanished entirely. He looked between the phone and me, his jaw dropping. I turned my gaze directly to Clara, whose hands were now visibly shaking. You wanted to split everything down the middle, right? I asked, leaning in. Let's start with this house. I bought it in cash before we met. It's solely in my name. Your new promotion? It requires board approval. And as the chairman, I strictly enforce corporate ethics regarding spousal conflicts of interest. So effective Monday, your promotion is void. In fact, HR will be restructuring your entire department. Clara stood up, her chair screeching against the floorboards. You can't do this. We're married. We were married, I corrected her, standing up and smoothing down my shirt. But since you want to pay your own expenses, you can start by finding a new apartment. My lawyer will deliver the divorce papers by Monday morning. I looked at Julian, who was frozen in sheer terror, and then back to my wife. Lunch is on me, I said quietly, walking toward the door. Consider it the last free ride.